Now it's the Sage, Larry Elder, on 790 KABC.
We were misled that there was supposedly protests and then something sprang out of that, and the salt sprang out of that. And that was easily ascertained that was not the fact. And the American people could have known that within days, and they didn't know that.
With all due respect, the fact is we had 4 dead Americans. Was it because of a protest, or was it because of guys out for a walk one night who decided they'd go kill some Americans? What difference at this point does it make? It is our job to figure out what happened and do everything we can to prevent it from ever happening again, Senator. Now,
the crude and disgusting video sparked outrage throughout the Muslim world. Now, I have made it clear that the United States government had nothing to do with this video. And I believe its message must be rejected by all who respect our common humanity. It is an insult not only to Muslims, but to America as well.
We're joined by former UN Ambassador John Bolton. Ambassador, thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Ambassador, what did we learn yesterday from these 3 people, 2 of whom have self-described as whistleblowers?
Well, I think it was a stunning hearing. It was gripping. It was emotional at times, but it was very professional, very factual, no partisanship, no spin, and it made clear, I think, beyond any doubt, that the people on the ground in Libya on the day of the September 11 attack, people in responsible positions elsewhere in the government, all knew from the outset that this was a terrorist attack and not something having to do with this Mohammed video. And I think that while that question is now answered beyond doubt, one of the interesting things about the hearing was how many other questions were opened up. You know, we've had 8 months of not knowing much of anything other than the official spin line, and what with a very professional testimony of these witnesses did is just open up huge new areas for questioning.
I should point out that these 3 witnesses, Ambassador, are not partisans. They are civil servants. They're not Democrats. They're not Republicans. They're professionals.
Well, that's exactly right. And what was, I thought, particularly interesting was that they were all able to testify to ways in which their efforts to bring the truth out have been met by retaliation from within the State Department and the administration, being cut out of meetings, cut out of areas of responsibility, denied promotions, and seeing their careers otherwise hindered. And I think that's why, in part, it's taken so long for the whistleblowers to come forward. Look, it's when your career is being threatened, that's obviously something you have to take into account for yourself and your family. But I'm hoping that the brave example of these 3 witnesses will induce other possible whistleblowers to come forward so that they can tell what they know about what happened before, during, and after the Benghazi attack.
Now, one of those who testified was Greg Hicks. He is in the death of Craig Stevens, the #1 diplomat now on the ground in Libya. He said that he talked to Hillary Rodham Clinton at 2 o'clock in the morning and told her right then and there that the consulate was, quote, under attack.
Well, that was one of the most stunning pieces of testimony. And he went on to say that there was never any reporting from the embassy about any demonstration because there was no demonstration. And he said very explicitly, for us in Libya, the YouTube video was not an issue. And this is corroborated in any number of other things that came out during the testimony. So it really poses a very stark contrast between what the people on the ground in Libya knew what was happening at the time and the various stories that have been put forward by Susan Rice, by Hillary Clinton, by Barack Obama in the days and weeks after the attack.
Ambassador, did President Obama lie to us? Did Secretary of State Clinton lie to us?
Well, you know, that requires speculating about what their mental state was, what their intent was. What I think we can say with certainty is what they said was absolutely false.
Did they know what they said was false at the time?
You know, that's the question that remains unanswered. You've got a flat contradiction here from Mr. Hicks's testimony and what Hillary Clinton has said. She said she didn't know anything about it, and he said he testified to the contrary, under oath, I might add. So I think that we need now more access to the files, to the emails, to the witnesses, to the people who were involved, so we can sort this out. You know, it was Hillary Clinton, who said with the caskets of the 4 murdered Americans there at Andrews, who blamed it on the Mohammed video. This went on for weeks. The president spoke to the United Nations General Assembly weeks after the attack, and was still using the story. It's very hard to understand. Very hard.
I'm talking to former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, John Bolton. He's on Facebook, AMB Bolton, his Twitter handle, at AMB John Bolton. Ambassador, let's talk about the precautions before the attack took place. I'm hearing that people up to and including Ambassador Stevens demanded more security, that the British had pulled out from their consulate in the same area because of fears of security problems, and the very same compound that was attacked on 9/11 had been attacked twice before.
Well, that's exactly right, and we have ample evidence of repeated requests for enhanced security from the embassy, both for the embassy itself and for the consulate in Benghazi, in months and months before the attack. And I think there's a more general problem here as well. The Arab Spring by that time had been going on for a year and a half, going on 2 years. Demonstrations, riots, turmoil in major cities throughout the Middle East. Back in 2011, in Libya itself, when the people were struggling against Gaddafi, we had to evacuate American civilians from Tripoli. We had so few naval assets in the Mediterranean, we had to rent a Greek ferry boat to take them out. Now, why, after a year and a half of turmoil across the region, North Africa and the Middle East, hadn't the United States said, we may have a problem here. We may have other situations where we have to evacuate Americans or protect Americans from attacks or demonstrations. Why weren't more assets put into the Mediterranean? And I think that's a question that goes to this fundamental issue of the Obama administration's unwillingness to see that the threat of global terrorism was a continuing, indeed a growing threat.
Ambassador Bolton, you mentioned assets. Were there enough assets so that the special ops forces that were off the coast of Tripoli could have done something? And did somebody tell them to stand down?
Well, there's still a lot of dispute about that, and I think that's one reason why we just need more facts before we can reach a conclusion. But again, I'll come to Mr. Hicks, who said that he had special forces people who were present at the embassy in Tripoli, who it was felt after they had actually evacuated the embassy because they feared attack, they got into a safer position, that he wanted to send 4 people to Benghazi, and his defense attaché told him unambiguously the team couldn't go because they didn't have authorization. Now, there again, that's a flat contradiction to what the Pentagon has said. You can't reconcile two opposites like that, so we need to get further into this. The defense attaché, a lieutenant colonel, bring him up, let him testify. Let's see who told him he didn't have authorization.
Ambassador, bottom line right now, if we're talking about a political cover, we're talking about incompetence, we're talking about an ideological narrative that Al-Qaeda was on the run, which is what Obama said 5 days before the attack, and that's why the story all got put out. What do you think the motive is?
Well, I don't think we can come to a definitive judgment. I've said before, though, I hope it is a political cover-up for the sake of our country's national security. Because if it's a political cover-up, that can be fixed. But if it's the ideological blindness of the administration, unwilling, unable to see the continuing threat of terrorism and the risk to our people in the region and around the world, then that is much more serious. If you can't see a problem, you cannot protect against it.
Former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, John Bolton, is my guest. Ambassador, I know you have to run real quickly. We've not talked since the Boston bombings. The CIA had at least one of the bombers on a watch list. The FBI did. Homeland Security knew that Tamerlan had left the country, apparently knew that he'd come back. No one's talking to anybody. Are we talking about somebody dropping the ball here, or is this the kind of thing that, given how porous this country is, we can expect from time to time things like this are going to happen, nobody's fault?
Well, you know, we thought after 9/11, the original 9/11 in 2001, we had taken major steps to correct all this. But, you know, former Democratic Senator Joseph Lieberman testified today that obviously the system still wasn't working. So I think we need to do more. We should have the capability to have better control over who's coming in. This isn't people creeping across the border. They're coming in through our major airports, and we apparently still can't control it. So something's wrong here.
And Ambassador, on Syria, the president said that the introduction of chemical weapons would be a game changer that would change my calculation, would be a red line. Now it appears that chemical weapons have been used, and the red line has been crossed. What do we do now?
Well, I think the president's failure to follow through on his own red line, indeed trying to erase the red line, has impaired his credibility, impaired our country's credibility. Now, having said that, I thought it was a mistake to draw this red line, and I don't think that having made one mistake, you should compound it with another. But we need a more coherent policy on Syria. To me, the critical American interest is making sure these chemical weapons don't get into the hands of terrorists and get out of the country where they could be used against us and our allies worldwide. That's what we ought to be focusing on right now.
Former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, John Bolton. Ambassador, as always, thank you very much.